distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to today's presentation on the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. Today promises to be another exciting time. We are going to have a very interesting topic before us. But before I start proper, let me greet my elders in the house in a very special way. I greet my Oga, Professor Akim Tijani, all the way from US, joining us this early 5 a.m. in the time of his location. And of course, the presenter is there and other professional colleagues. I can see Mrs. Ileka, a director in our university who is always with us. She's there, and I can see Professor Alero Akujobi. You are most welcome, ma. And before we start proper, just to remind us that this center is a TED Fund sponsored center that started last year in the National Open University of Nigeria under the leadership of the previous Vice Chancellor. But I must start by saying there's a special greetings from our Vice Chancellor, the current Vice Chancellor, Professor Olufemi Peters, who is very busy this moment, but may join us later. He sends his greetings and said he will try his best to join us perhaps before the end of this presentation. We want to let you know that this center does a lot of, we have a lot of things we are involved in, but above all is that it's a research hub for all disciplines. And we also are interested in presenting very good papers in our journals. In our journal that we always peer review, and the presentations on they are always peer reviewed, and it is free of charge to publish in our journal, but we ask that you give us the best, and we give you the best by giving you free publication. The latest journal is on our website. When you log in to our CMGS.NOUN.edu website, you will see the latest journal, our volume 1, issue 2. We have 2 issues every year. And so next year, we'll be coming up with volume 2, issue 1. So just to let you know that this is a very active and vibrant center, and we believe in research that is cutting-edge research. Today, we are going to have a very brilliant presentation. Like I said, we are having our presenter is already online, and his name is Professor Taofiq Ibrahim. Professor Taofiq Ibrahim is a professor of public health and community medicine in the Department of Community Health, Faculty of Clinical Sciences, College of Health Sciences, Usman Dan Fodio University, Sokoto, and that happens to also be his alma mater. He commenced his academic career in his alma mater as an associate lecturer in the Department of Community Health since the year 1991. And he went through all the ranks to become a professor. Professor Ibrahim's expertise includes research and professional practice in epidemiology, disease control, research methodology, health systems research, clinical preventive medicine, and has core interest in leadership and governance. He has extensively published in local and international outlets and has supervised many PhD theses, master's dissertations, and authored many books. Professor Ibrahim has a working experience in the United Nations system as consultant in field epidemiology with the World Health Organization in the year 2000 to 2004, and served as Vice Chancellor at Al-Hikmah University, Ilorin, from July 2015 to July 2020. He is a very experienced researcher, and he will be taking us on courses and novel strategies for the mitigation of corruption in developing countries. I must say we are very privileged to have this sound and distinguished scholar amongst us this morning, and we are all going to learn from him. When I saw his slides, I know that we are going to learn a great deal from this erudite scholar we have before us. I must also say it wasn't easy getting him here. He's always very busy, having series of lectures. Everybody wants him to come and deliver lecture. And so I pray specially to have him have this lecture with us today, this distinguished lecture. We are going to give Prof 35 minutes, because I know that many people will have questions for him. So we are going to give him 35 minutes. Let's say we may extend it to maximum of 40. So Prof, you are going to start right away. You are a co-host and you have the permission to share your screen. You are welcome, Prof. Thank you for being with us. Over to you, sir, Professor Taofiq. You can unmute yourself, sir. Challenge. It looks like Prof is having a network challenge. Let me.
Hello, I'm back. My network is back. My network is back.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir. So you have the virtual space, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me first share my slide. And let me share my slide. Hello, can we see my slide?
Yes, the screen is coming up. It's coming up. Yes, sir. Yeah, good to go.
Can we see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, distinguished Mr. Vice Chancellor in absentia, distinguished members of this management and the Senate, the chairman of this event, the director of the Center for Migration and Global Studies, and members of our team. Former Vice Chancellor who might be in the room with us, very distinguished professors, deans, heads of departments, staff and students of the National Open University of Nigeria. Very distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Let me start foremost by thanking God Almighty for making it possible for us to see the light of another day. And we besought God's choicest blessings on his prophets. I salute you all with a greeting of peace and a good morning to everyone. I hope the house is with me.
Yes, we are hearing you, bro.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to thank very much the Vice Chancellor. I want to thank the Director, Dr. Gloria Aneto, for inviting me. And I must not particularly fail to note Professor Hakeem Tijani, the former Director, for giving me the invitation in the first instance. And I must apologize that I was not able to deliver in that period until now. Well, it's a government in continuity, so we thank God that eventually we are here today. The topic which I'm to deliver this lecture on this morning is one that is very pertinent, I'm sure, to everyone in this space and beyond. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, apparently for every reason: the causes and novel strategies for the mitigation of corruption in developing countries. Let me say that the goal and objective of this presentation is for me to, I will attempt to establish a nexus of the root causes, consequences, and novel strategies for the elimination of corruption in developing countries. With a deep sense of humility, I do expect that it will make a modest contribution to policy development in Africa, and particularly in the area of mitigating this problem of corruption and associated problems of insecurity and migration in the continent. History is very explicit. From antiquity, there are records to show that corruption has always been in existence. We should not take too much of time to go into the details of this. Corruption is a major challenge. Excuse me. Corruption is a major challenge. It's a global problem. However, we should particularly note that it is a bigger problem in Africa and most of the developing world. Whereas corruption is prevalent everywhere, it kills, it renders several dead in the developing world. And this is the big issue. We should then be able to raise such a question as, to what extent is information available to the public in respect of our enormous natural resources, on the rules and regulations guiding business exploits and transactions? How many of the websites of public institutions, ministries, departments, and agencies do we have appropriate and detailed information to benchmark their operations for transparency and accountability? We cannot talk about corruption and eliminating corruption in the absence of transparency and accountability. Are there statutory regulations or our government?
Prof, sir.
Yes.
If you can put your presentation in slide mode so that you can go from one slide to the other with ease. Slide mode is right up there, your screen.
It's all right.
That slide presentation so that you can, slide show. Sorry. If you can put it in that, then the slide can be moving to the next.
Are you comfortable with this?
Yes, sir. I think it's better now.
With it?
Yes, sir. That's
good. So the point I'm making is that it's about the presence of statutory regulations rather than running our government on discretionary notes. What is the magnitude of the problem that we're talking about? One report put it that the global cost of bribery is about 600 billion to 1.7 trillion in 2005. In 2008, the Christian Aid was able to show that over $100 billion in tax revenues were lost by way of trade mispricing. Another report gave 187 billion sometime for the period 1970 to 1996. Now, look at this. The magnitude of the problem is very essential. For 5 countries, Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Uganda, again from trade mispricing alone, between 2002 and 2011, over $60 billion moved out illegally into or out of those countries. For Nigeria, the 80 Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative that is responsible for global standards for improving transparency of revenues from natural resources, in 2009, as far back as that, identified over $800 million of unresolved differences between what companies said that they paid in taxes and royalties and all sorts against what the government said it received in Nigeria. The largest amount owed to the government in the report was an estimated $4.7 billion by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation for payments of domestic crude. This sum that is missing, if put together, was said to exceed the 2009 individual budget for the Ministries of Education, Health, and Power. The $1 trillion scandal report 2014 by the One Campaign Organization stated the world developing countries are deprived of at least $1 trillion annually by criminals and corrupt officials who exploit layers of security to siphon off cash through money laundering, illegal tax evasion, and embezzlement. We can go on and on about the magnitude of this problem. It is important also to note that global reports suggest that if we are able to stop corruption, the revenues that will be freed up, if invested in health systems, will avert 3.6 million deaths per year between 2015 and 2025 in low-income countries. It could avert about 4.3 million deaths per year between 2015 and 2025 in lower middle-income countries. Put the world on track to end preventable child deaths in these countries by 2030. It could add about $13 trillion to the global economy by 2019, which we have survived by almost 2 years. And it will contribute over half of the G20's growth target through transparent, open data and the economic opportunities created.
Looks like that's a challenge again.
Network problem?
Yes. Let's see whether he'll be back.
Network. Oh my God.
Wow. We are not hearing you again. It's like the network has since gone. So, okay, maybe you should have a second one standby. Don't know. Okay, so I should just. So sorry about that. He will soon join us. Okay. Network challenge.
Director, you got me confused.
Oh, good morning, sir.
Yes, I thought that this. I thought it had been postponed till Friday. What are we doing on Friday?
Oh, the fellows are having a meeting.
Okay.
The fellows. Okay. But this one is our normal Wednesday.
I thought it was this one that was postponed, but I just saw the message after a few minutes after 11. I had to come in late.
No wonder we didn't see you. I know you are always the first to come.
Yes, but I didn't. Yeah. I thought it was this one that was postponed.
No. This one is Wednesday. We are not changing the day.
That yet. Friday is a meeting of the fellows.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Yes. I think the presenter is back.
Yes, it's coming back now. Trying to share his screen.
Sorry for that.
Yeah. So welcome back, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you, voice.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, like I was saying, sorry for the disruption in the network service. And I want to seize the opportunity to welcome Professor Sogolo, the former Vice Chancellor. Thank you for making it with us.
I'm not former Vice Chancellor.
Thank you very much, sir. The consequences of corruption is quite enormous, and we need to understand them and grasp them properly in order to be able to address this problem with all the energy that it deserves. Now, again, I will not want to take too much of our time about what are the consequences. We know that summarily, it translates us into having a very weak state, poor development, and insecurity. Nothing else can better understand the consequences of corruption in developing countries other than what we are currently experiencing in Nigeria. The bundle of youths that are unemployed, they are idle, and constituting nuisance to all of us, to the peace of the nation. Similarly, the effect of corruption on rural population, the long-term neglect of rural population without adequate employment, without adequate engagement for economic purposes, and we continue to be worried about population rise when the rural populace are not properly engaged. Their entertainment will be reproduction, cohabitation for reproduction. Their youths cannot do anything than to resort into crimes. And these are some of the consequences of what we are witnessing today. Consequences of corruption, to move it a bit further, it will distract us from services that will directly benefit the poor and the growth process. Water supply will be affected, electricity, agriculture, sanitation, security, education, and health. It will result in reduction in government revenues because of rent seeking. People taking the corners, people in government trying to ensure that they get commissions rather than make the system to work. The slide I have here talks so much about what are the other consequences that the nations in the developing world face as a result of corruption.
Please, remember to put a slide show.
Hello, can you see me? Is the audience see me?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we can see that the social structure gets collapsed because citizens do no longer trust government because of increased vulnerability of the poor and the spread of hatred among societies. It begins even more complex when you see the effect of corruption on social capital. Social capital is a concept reflecting social structures that enable people to work collectively for the group, for the good of the group. But because of the distrust of citizens in government, they naturally lose the spirit to work together. People are not worried that the environment is so unsanitary. They fail to come together to see how sanity will be brought back with respect to sanitation on our streets, because they feel government that has the primary responsibility is not up and doing in that respect. And there are so many of such that the citizens are generally lackadaisical because they felt the government is not doing much that it should do to address social responsibility to its citizens. The brain drain response. Brain drain response. Due to people being tired of the existing system, of being treated unfairly, and because of several unfavorable outcomes associated with corruption, by the time I get to a slide, you will all appreciate the fact that the saving grace will be emigration for developing countries. Emigration, that will be the saving grace. Should we allow the current trend of corruption to persist? And that is why we will need several studies on several migration studies to address this issue. The empirical evidence from 111 countries around the world shows that there is significant push factors, right? that corruption is a significant push factor for migration across continents of the world. Distinguished participants in my audience, you will notice that I did not start by any attempt to define or explain what corruption is. This is on my conviction that all of us understand what corruption is so much and adequately. Dictionaries of different bands, they are all consistent with respect to the definition and the effect of corruption. But I particularly find it useful that the up 2015 definition of corruption summarizes the various definitions of the dictionary, of the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes, of the World Bank, and the other United Nations agencies. Corruption involves behavior on the part of office holders or employees in public and private sectors, in which they improperly and unlawfully advance their private interests to enrich themselves, or induce others to do so by misusing the position in which they are placed. So this is this summarizes all other definitions of corruption. Having said this, what are the causes and influences of corruption? The slide we have here, as you can see, has listed over 10 possible causes.
Excuse me, there's so much echoing. I'm hearing two voices on my own side. I hope it's not me.
The same thing from my side.
Yes.
Maybe he has two systems on. Prof, sir, do you have two systems on where you are?
Only one. Only one. I think we should watch the control end and other participants.
So some people are talking somewhere.
No, I can't hear that here. I think the background noise is over now.
Some people are supposed to mute their own system, please.
It may be good to mute.
All other people should mute their system.
Are we together?
But the echoing is gone. The echoing is gone now.
Okay, good.
It appears to go.
Now, of all these causes and influences of corruption, I particularly want to talk about transparency, about lack of accountability, about conflict of interest, about natural resource endowment. Now, the point to note, from the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned
Yes, so let me unmute him. Yes, so you can unmute yourself, sir. Yes, so come and show me.
hello?
Sir, you can, yes, he has unmuted.
Hello?
So yeah, you can hear you now, sir.
On this list of causes and influences of corruption, I will particularly want to address the issue of transparency, lack of accountability, and conflict of interest. These are the major bane of corruption in developing countries. Transparency, lack of accountability. I mentioned this to some extent at the beginning of this presentation. Most of our dealings, the dealings of government in developing countries, are shrouded in secrecy. They are shrouded in secrecy. Even when you go to the websites of institutions, of ministries, departments and agencies, we do not see adequate information about what they are doing and what they are supposed to be doing, against which we can benchmark to see whether they are on course to meet development targets. Without establishing adequately transparency and lack of accountability, without establishing transparency and accountability, we cannot move much to solve the problem of corruption. Now, when you look at the conflict of interest, most of government of public natural resources and the ministries that are in charge, you discover that the owners of the businesses that government is running belong to politicians. The oil sector, the oil and gas sector, and all other natural resources, mining and development, to what extent is it that the people that are in government, politicians, are not the owners of these businesses? Ownership of businesses, there must be complete attempt in terms of disclosure of conflict of interest. It should be in the public domain to know who are the owners of businesses. I do not want to forget a point that when we want to talk about transparency and accountability, let us imagine how much money the government will save from leakages with respect to ghost workers if the website of ministries, departments, agencies, and institutions has the list of workers that are in their different sections, so that the public knows who are the workers, so that we're able to say that we don't know these workers in my department, you don't know these workers in your department. It will, to a great extent, make transparency very feasible and will make accountability very essential. Now, corruption, the classification. The classification of corruption is such that of all the classes, I will only want to pick the most popular. Classification of corruption into political and bureaucratic or administrative corruption. Honestly, I must appreciate the Center for giving me the opportunity of the privilege of working on the topic of my choice, and the fact that you sent me back to school to go and learn so much, and I'm so happy that I learned so much about this problem of corruption. I felt so happy after going through all the materials to discover that the problem of corruption lies most importantly with the people in government. The various classification of corruption as a political corruption and the bureaucratic corruption, private corruption and collective corruption, redistributive corruption and extractive corruption, high-level well-organized corruption and low-level chaotic corruption, primary corruption and secondary corruption. Most outstanding is the distinction of corruption, distinction into political and bureaucratic. The political corruption is again designated as grand corruption, and the bureaucratic and administrative corruption is classified as petty corruption. So most of the problem of corruption we have is because of political corruption. We will soon see what it implies. It involves political decision makers taking place at the high levels of the political system. This is what it is. It is the manipulation of political institutions and the rules of procedure which influences the institutions of government and political system and will lead to institutional decay. Political corruption is when laws and regulations are systematically abused by the rulers, sidestepped, ignored, or tailored to fit their interests. Take example of the mining industry, the mining of natural resources, petroleum exploration. Where are the rules? Who decides who should be allocated the oil rigs? Are the people in political positions supposed to allocate oil rigs to themselves? How did the country decide the allocation of these oil rigs? How is it done? Where are the laws to be so explicit on how it is done? How is it that the people that are in government are also owners of the oil rigs? How was it done? How did you come about it as a nation for developing countries? So many researchers and authors have looked into this so extensively. And when you look at the features of bureaucratic corruption is also called administrative corruption, and it's also called petty corruption. It is the corruption that takes place in the ministry at the level of director generals, of permanent secretaries, of directors, of deputy directors, of all of us that are in the public service. Hello? Hello? I'm hearing some noise from the background.
Yes, there's one Alimi disturbing us. Kindly mute yourself, please.
Okay.
Okay,
Are you with us?
Yeah, okay.
Hello?
Sir. Continue, sir.
Okay.
Continue, sir. We are together.
I was saying it's important for us to note in order to eliminate the problem of corruption, grand corruption and petty corruption. Grand corruption among at the high echelon of
The network challenge. Sorry for the network challenge. We can't hear you. There's a network challenge again, please.
I have two.
It's coming back. It's coming back. It's back, I think. Is my document still shared? Can we see my slides? Can we see my slide?
You can share your screen again, sir.
Yes, I'm sharing it now. Are we there?
It's coming up.
Can we see?
Not yet.
See? Hello?
Not yet. Not yet, sir.
House with me?
We can't see your screen yet.
I've shared it. I've shared. My screen is shared.
It has not come out.
Hello? Oh, gracious God.
Coming up very slowly.
MTN and Airtel both at this end, and yet we're having this problem. Hello? Is it up?
Yes, come up now.
Is it up?
Yes.
Okay.
It's up now.
Okay. Okay. Are we comfortable with the display? The slides?
It's my own. Let's get
on the slideshow.
It is
It's
back
okay,
now,
right?
Prof. Yes, it's
Okay,
back.
thank you very much.
Back. Okay.
Thank you very much. So let me go quickly to the novelty of my thoughts. The point is that there is the need to look at the root causes of corruption. They must be properly identified. And we need to ask a fundamental question in order to get to the root of this problem. Why are people corrupt? Why are people corrupt? We must take our approach from this fundamental basis. I evolved and constructed two models, which I'm going to share with us now, in an attempt to address and answer the question of why people are corrupt. Here we are. Perhaps over my 20-something years of lecturing in the public health and community medicine, we have what we call the Epidemiological Triangle, which depicts the relationship between human beings as hosts and the environment and the infectious agents or other non-infectious agents in the environment, how they work together to predispose man to diseases or keep him in a state of health. So I've used that, my experience, in my thought over the problem of solution to corruption to come up with this triangle of relationship. There are three main factors here: inherent intrapersonal root factor in the human host, inherent interpersonal factor in the human host, then the predisposing circumstantial motivating environmental factors, particularly harsh economic conditions, and institutional factors, enabling institutional factors. All these three factors must coexist completely without any mutual exclusivity for corruption to be sustained. We need to look at this fundamentally. If a person in himself or herself has inherent interpersonal disposition, but the environmental factor, particularly economic condition, is not favorable to advance its corrupted tendency, then the corruption process will be eliminated, it will be interrupted. If the economic condition is so harsh, in addition, as a matter of motivation to a human being, but institutional factors are able to prevent the machination of progress of corrupt tendency, then corruption cannot be executed. So this takes me to the bigger picture. The big picture is here. The two fundamental root problems of corruption, there are two. In my opinion, only two. One is difficulty and inability of citizens to meet basic and or general needs due to lack of means or inadequate means. This is one fundamental challenge to corruption. The second one is greed. Greed, lust, covetousness. These are the two root factors. These two root factors give rise to desperation as the stem of the problem. Desperation. Desperation. And the fruits of desperation, we can see them here. These are the fruits of desperation. Frustrations, and when people are frustrated, they go into anger, into violence, into insecurity. The people that get frustrated, they are not likely to be, the extent of frustration that will get into anger, into violence, into insecurity, may not be me and you. Mostly these people they are the voiceless, uneducated persons who have meager or no means and are readily available hands and foot soldiers for crimes, for violence, insecurity in the society. And then we have overt crimes, those as consequence of desperation, going to drug abuse, commercial sex, armed robbery, kidnapping, banditry, and all sorts. It ends up in insecurity. And we have the corruption as a result of desperation, illegitimate depletion of resources, of the country's resources, state resources, local government resources, economic depression, poor infrastructures, and all that and all that. And restive youth, frustrations, overt crimes, immigration, health, education sectors collapse, and all that. All this will end up in insecurity. The only one that has a white background is the immigration, with the greener pastures in immigration, greener pasture in immigration, and the best brains drain. Best brains will drain as a means of survival to avert the consequences of its insecurity. So this is what I've captured as a model for us to have closer and in-depth look at the root and stem causes of corruption and how we can go about it. Now we look at this, the push factors, the people's inability to feed, the quest for functional housing supported by functional electricity, water supply, sanitation, and other environmental ambience, transportation, healthcare, education. These needs do not only exacerbate tremendous pressure on struggles and pockets of citizens, it also shapes their social behavior in communities. These needs can be attributed to account for most of petty or bureaucratic and administrative corruption, because even permanent secretaries, director generals are not sure of what happens to them after retirement. Let's look at a sample of how government and governance, failure on governance, can push people to desperation and push them to criminality. The government role, what I call the government role in the making of criminals. Look at this, the difference in monthly income and conservative cost of basic needs for a lower class civil service worker in Nigeria. House rent, you can go through the details of the breakdown. Feeding, clothing, school fees, transportation. And the total expenditure here is 48,000 naira. And the income at 18,000 naira means a deficit balance for 30,000. And where we are to work on 30,000 naira minimum wage, the deficit in income will be 18,000 naira. How does any worker now account for the difference? It's either endurance or corruption. What about middle cadre public officers? For the middle cadre, this is the estimate I was able to come up with. Expenditure for the middle cadre civil servant is about 280,000 naira per month. And with an income of 250,000 naira, the deficit in the balance will be a gain of over 30,000 naira. What will now account for the difference? We are beginning to have another interference, please. So the difference is such that the income and expenditure is reduced by citizens' endurance or corruption. Hello? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Now, the two scenarios of the monthly income and expenditure deficit figures that I showed depict the relative difficulty and desperation that citizens encounter in their struggle to achieve a standard level of living. And of course, the consequent difficulty and desperation that may lead to corrupt behavior. This takes us to the question of my novel strategies to eliminate corruption in developing countries. The solutions are based on addressing the inherent intrapersonal root factors in the etiology of corruption. It is about instituting strategies that will address difficulty and inability to meet basic needs, to address greed, and to address desperation. How can we do this? I subscribe to the opinion of a researcher that corruption is not a weakness of people, but of institutions, as they will be the ones to obstruct the greed and temptation of individuals within them. They will make provision for citizens and they will obstruct greed in citizens. So without mincing words, corruption is a failure of governance. And the way we can go on to solve this problem is that we cannot continue to neglect very large areas of unmet needs. In agriculture, in sanitation, in security, in education. Hello?
We are hearing you, sir.
Okay, so we cannot continue to neglect very large areas of unmet needs in agriculture, in security, in sanitation, and education at the expense of idle youths and the consequences of their idleness. So we need to look into this. How can we solve this problem? Foremost, all civil hostilities must stop. Civil hostilities are not solutions. All the warring factions about restructuring in terms of disintegration of the country, as we have in Nigeria and elsewhere, they are not the solution. The problem is not about people of same tribe, same religion, existing separately, as we have seen in other countries that are working across continents. The United States of America, China, and the United Kingdom and several others, they are multi-ethnic societies. They are multi-religious societies. These are not the factors at work determining our development. It is corruption, that the lacking of character and the lacking of competence, that is what the problem is in developing countries. So we should be ready to address the difficulty of meeting basic needs. We should be ready to address the issue of greed and desperation. And
sir, I want you to quickly round off
Okay.
In another 2-3 minutes, so that we can discuss this topic very well. Thank you, sir.
To move on, we need to make, we must have determination, the determination of will. We must be ready to do it. We must be ready to make corruption difficult. We must be ready to reform. Accountability and transparency must be put in place. Standardization of rules. And more importantly, aggressive intellectual media-mediated advocacy work, championed by the academia, the media, including bar associations, medical associations, labor unions, and people with conscience in the society. Now, the specific things, I'm advocating massive youth employment in large expanse of areas with unmet needs. We need to render out-of-pocket expenditures on basic needs, remove most of the pressure from people's pockets. By public, how can we make things work such that citizens will spend less from their pockets on education, on health, on transportation? We can pool resources together. I want to quickly say that TED Fund is working. TED Fund has been working. Among all the projects in Nigeria, if you visit educational institutions, it is easy for us to see how the TED Fund as a special funding mechanism is working in Nigeria. How can we see a commission that will be set up in Nigeria for youth employment in agriculture? In agriculture, we want to see the provision of land for massive youth engagement in agriculture. Youth engagement and employment in government-promoted public-private agriculture, right? Farming villages where youth will be given houses and the private sector will be engaged on productivity of agricultural products. Once we have the establishment of such, a lot of our youth can be engaged. Affordable, low-cost housing estate for lower level cadre of personnel, of citizens in our countries. And transportation, there could be pooled and shared funding to meet basic needs. Like we see in the developed world, we can use cards. We should be able to work it out, how we can move to that level, so that a percentage of everybody's income, everyone's income, will go into the card system. And irrespective of the low level of your income, because we have pooled resources together and using the card, citizens can be able to move in within cities and inter-cities across the country without much dilemma. Primary education, special funding is needed, like TED Fund is working. Where is such special funding that we should see to be working for primary education? Because the main problem of corruption and the lack of development in developing countries lies basically in two things: education, the lack of education by majority of citizens, and two, the maladministration of income. On this note, let me thank the Vice Chancellor. I want to thank the Director of the Center for giving me this opportunity, and particularly the audience that you've been able to.
Thank you very much, Prof.
To address this problem. The other details of my recommendation of 4% of oil and gas income and 1% of revenue from private sector to support employment for youth and primary and secondary school education are all detailed in this presentation.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. That is a wonderful and a very insightful lecture. Everybody is already clapping for you loudly here. I really appreciate this wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
And I know many people are eager to say one or two things. I'll start with my immediate predecessor, Professor Akim Tijani, who wants to make a comment. So please, Professor Tijani, and I will call you. There's a Dr. Aneto there who also wants to make a comment immediately after Professor Tijani. So please let us hear you in that succession. These are the two hands I've seen up for now. Okay, Professor Tijani.
Thank you very much. Can we stop sharing slides?
Please, Prof, can you stop sharing?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to commend the presenter for a brilliant and informative presentation. And my last comment will be my first, because it came up when the presenter was giving us some remedies for combating migration, for mitigating corruption within the context of migration. And I just remember that, if we can remember the Awolowo, farm villages, it was nice, which was a partnership with even the Israeli government. Then secondly, is the fact that as the former Vice Chancellor of Al-Iqma University, I think he was being modest without mentioning that revolution that we saw at Al-Iqma University as a leader of NUC accreditation, I believe a year or so ago. I was shocked that the founder has invested in agriculture and agricultural training, that the first 3 years, I believe, and he can add more influence, are free for students interested in studying agriculture. But I have decided to identify 4 issues, because if I should speak from the heart, I will be representing a paper, but I don't want to do that. Number 1, I think Prof has validated the fact that migration and global studies is not limited to the humanities and social sciences, as we started with, and I thank him for that. The issue of corruption and its connecting migratory chains is well presented in this case, because anyone looking at it will be wondering, what is it? What has corruption got to do with migration? But now it's been able to that it is transdisciplinary. We cannot say it is limited, as we have had to argue and even canvass for many to join us over a year ago. The second thing is that I was looking for when you presented, Prof, the novel strategies, your novel strategies, I was looking for a micro study or case study of institutional response. I know you kind of tried to allude to it, but I was looking for that, in fact, in a comparative way, whereby the country you, quote unquote, try to present to us without mentioning that country that we all know about, could have been compared with another in terms of the institutional response to this issue. Then the third one is that you also mentioned the modeling of corruption. The moment you mention your modeling of corruption, I begin to look at the need for us. When I say I mean globally, particularly in the world, and more importantly in Nigeria, in this country, to rethink our curriculum and pedagogical dispensation of the content in a multidisciplinary manner. You see, we teach in silos. When you say history, some people believe, history has no relevance. And it started by saying it has a relevance, even within the context of health education, within the context of corruption, within the context of mitigating against it, and within the context of cutting the physical and the non-physical movement of human and non-human flight, as eloquently presented. So on this note, I will pause and stop. But again, I commend you for
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution.
No, sir, Professor Taofiq, sir, I think they should just bring the questions together, then you note them and answer all at once. Yes. So, Dr. Aneto, you have the virtual space. You've been asked to unmute. Let us see your face. Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much for this very great lecture, quite lucidly presented. And I'm happy that somebody from the medical sector took up the subject of corruption to discuss, which is a major problem confronting this country. But I have an issue with some of the root causes he mentioned, and that's the aspect of education as a cause of, or lack of education as a cause of corruption. I wish to disagree with you because we are witnesses as to what happens in this country. So many very highly educated people have been implicated in one form of corruption or the other. Not just in this country, even some other places, United States, Germany, Europe, and so on. So is lack of education really a major contributor to corruption? I don't quite share that view. I think that it's rather lack of proper formation or lack of proper understanding of what education is. Many people we call educated individuals are actually just learning on letters. They do not completely assimilate the core principles of what it is to be educated. So I would say that lack of proper understanding of what it takes to be educated, lack of formation are some of the issues that contribute to corruption. Many of the reasons you have used are very right. Poor infrastructure, inadequate remuneration. How do you give somebody $50,000 naira every month, and you put him in charge of 1 billion naira project, and you want the person, to be a saint in the face of lack of facilities, lack of health, then the extended family, and so these are the issues. I think you address the issue very well, and you advance a number of possible measures that can be taken to mitigate the situation. But I do disagree with you that lack of education is a major contribution. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Please, Professor Sogolo, you are the next, sir. Professor Sogolo.
Okay, then you have to unmute me.
Yes, we can hear you. You're already unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to congratulate Professor Taofiq Ibrahim for this detailed analysis of corruption, because he has touched on various aspects of corruption. But I think I disagree with some of the premises on which he has made his conclusion. First, the correlation between poverty, that is state of economy of a society, and corruption is not necessarily given. In other words, it is not true that there's research to confirm that the poorer a country is, the more corrupt the people. In other words, it is not necessarily true that the most corrupt countries are the poorest countries. That is the first point I want to make. The second point is that, I believe that we ought to have stressed one aspect of corruption, which has to do with attitude. And this is something that is really built into society itself. You see, there is this saying that in China, the corrupt person is executed, that in Japan, the corrupt person commits suicide, whereas in Nigeria, the corrupt person presents himself for election and is elected by the people. Now, see, so this is an attitudinal issue. The people elected by the people, the corrupt person is elected by the people. Whereas in Japan or in China, there is the attitude that the corrupt person cannot coexist in society. So it is something that has permeated our culture, and it is deeper than some of the points that the presenter had made. I know it's a paper that can be improved upon, because you see, we have come to a level now where even in government, you have a contract being signed, and then you have an item, which simply is that this item is for bribing, and it is accepted by government. It is accepted even by the very NGOs that stand against corruption. So this is the aspect that we need to go into, namely that corruption has permeated the thinking of people, and the dangerous part, the most dangerous part, that it is being taken as a given, being taken as an acceptable part of society. That is where we need to start. We need to start that so that our children do not grow up believing that certain things are taken for granted, that the politician is corrupt. Therefore, there's nothing we can do about that. That is where we go wrong. We must start from that level. Today, those in parliament, they know themselves, all right, that corruption is part of their system, and they have accepted it. And we are making that mistake of also accepting them and taking it for granted. So it is the attitudinal aspect that I want us to emphasize in terms of corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sheikh Musa Nojimuddin. I'm sorry if I didn't call that name well. You have been allowed to unmute yourself, sir. So kindly unmute and speak with us. You are still muted. Unmute yourself.
I'll mute myself now.
Okay, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to commend the presenter, Professor Ibrahim, for a comprehensive and awesome presentation. Right. It's a paper that actually require further expansion and explanation, which are the 50 minutes or so that you have to present. Wasn't adequate, obviously, and but that notwithstanding, I want to align with the last speaker, as regard the attitude. The economy aspect, the social factor, are also responsible for corruption, not only in Nigeria and also over the world. So I want to ask the question: is corruption pandemic or endemic? That's my number one question. Is it pandemic or endemic? Secondly, system. How do you stop corruption? He has enumerated some points. Professor Ibrahim enumerated some points on that we are able to find solutions to corruption. But within time frame, can it be eliminated within the next 10 years? That's my second question. Then thirdly, we find that in the society we are, especially in Nigeria, yes, corruption is all over the world, but in Nigeria it's so obvious. The political system, take Nigeria back to the early 1960s. Corruption wasn't as obvious as it is now, but it has been institutionalized now. So how do we stop that? It's already rooted in the basis, on the fundamental basis of all aspects of the country. I don't know what is the responsibility or role that SERAP can and campaign in this space? What role are they playing already now? The socio-economic and accountability project that we have. Yes, this one is trying to assist in terms of presenting issue of this nation so that it can be widely discussed. And once it starts from somewhere, we are making progress. But if you just put a hand and keep quiet, it continues like that. And the generation to come, we still meet it. And it's better for us to solve it now and highlight milestones and systems that will eliminate corruption in our system. So I wish Professor Taofiq a wider and that he has showing all the light. And those are just additions that we think you should incorporate in presentation. Yes, they are giving us some areas: economic aspect, the social aspect, the society. They will heal a man that is what is his business? The business that cannot even bring in 1 million. Like the last prof said, it cuts across all academic aspects, all aspects of human being in Nigeria, not just a criminal doctor. No, it cuts across every aspect of Nigeria and every aspect of the economy and social system. So we hope if people like Professor Isiakoloede are in place, I think corruption will be eliminated in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let us allow our presenter to respond to all these concerns and comments so that we can come to the end of this presentation. So, Professor Taofiq,
thank you very much, Director. I want to appreciate all the compliments, and I want to specifically say that I very much agree with most of the comments that have been made. Certainly, I'm not without some differences to some of those opinions, but there are things that we need to work on further. Let me say that I do not think I did mention that lack of education is a cause of corruption, not lack of education. The education problem, the education sector may be one of the consequences in terms of affectation of corruption, but not that lack of education is a cause of corruption. No. When you have people that when the population of the country suffer from education, suffer from corruption, and the education sector is not properly developed in terms of giving education to a very large segment of its population, then what you have happening there is such that their earning capacity will be compromised, right? Their engagement in trades will be compromised, and therefore they can't belong onto the desperation in the model of what happens. Now, the other issue of Professor Sogolo with respect to attitudes. Now, the issue of attitudes, when we're looking at it, there's no doubt that issue of ethics and morality is fundamentally, they're very fundamental in attempt to eliminate corruption. Now, people can be operating at different levels, but when it comes to the level of governance, what we're saying is that we should have a way of harmonizing, of putting institutions in place, institutional values that will prevent corruption, that will eliminate corruption. Let's mind the words. Elimination is not the same thing as eradication. Elimination is not the same thing as eradication. We're talking about significant level of curbing corruption. So what we're saying is that if we're able to put the institutional values into place, no matter what the behavior, I'll give an example. Now that if in the country system, the metering system in electricity is to be brought into space, metering, using prepaid metering for consumption of electricity, the attitudes of individuals will no longer matter as long as they do not have the opportunity to tamper with the wirings. The developed world, we don't need to evolve new models. Evidences abound around the world of how the other segment of the world, they are dealing with corruption. They automate processes. When processes are automated, then people find it difficult, irrespective of their attitudes, to violate regulations, to run counter to regulations. Attitudes, yes, but the millions and billions of people on the globe, it's very difficult to have significant control over people's attitudes. But engineering policies help to keep these things in check. So that is the issue about trying to curb corruption. Now, there was this question that because of people's attitudes, people continue electing, the corrupt persons are elected by the people. The political class will continue to be elected in two ways: by rigging elections, and people continue to vote for them. Don't forget, is it me? I don't know the extent to which I'll be bribed to elect people into office. So the majority of people that are doing the voting, they are people without means. So when politicians give them advance money to them, bribe them with money, they go and cast the vote. They are hungry people. They are people without means. So that's how this will be sustained, unfortunately. Now, the issue of corruption raised by Sheikh Musa Najimuddin about whether corruption is an epidemic or pandemic, well, it doesn't fit into our epidemiological model to say whether it's a pandemic, or we don't have sufficient data to say that. We can only literally say that, and I said that at the beginning of my presentation, that that corruption is globally, it's occurring globally, right? But to fit into the definition of an epidemic as to the unexpected occurrence of an infectious or non-infectious condition or disease beyond what is expected for a place, number, and time, I do not know how we can model that at the moment. I think subsequently we might find a way to do that better. So whether it can be eliminated in the next 10 years or not, we must work with data to benchmark this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I want to say, I will just say corruption is endemic in Nigeria. I won't say epi, I will say it is endemic. It's very much with us.
I will not
Thank
say
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we
want to
had
thank you all very much.
interesting session. Thank you for attempting to answer all the questions. It's been a really fruitful day. We thank you for your time. And I want to let us know that we shall be having more sessions on this platform as available. But for now, we let you know when next we shall have a presentation. And we want to also appeal to people here that you cannot see that migration is not about medicine or social sciences alone. It's all disciplines. If a medical practitioner has come to talk about corruption and using his discipline to give the examples and the charts, telling us about triad of corruption that is applicable to our triad of disease and all those things, he's able to apply and integrate it to corruption. This is the kind of thing we want on this platform. So either you are a lawyer, a doctor, you are an engineer, whatever your discipline, you have a place in migration and global studies. This topic today, you agree, it's not really migration centered per se, but migration has come into it. And of course, it's a very topical global issue. And more so in our country, Nigeria, that I am saying corruption is endemic here. So it's that's the way we want it. You can all decide to call my number, send us a message, through our emails. We have it on the internet. We have our site, our website is there. You want to give us a topic, the way Prof has done it, you will be most welcome. We need more people to reach out to us, to share their knowledge with us. The center is open. Knowledge, present papers to us that are scholarly, that are evidence-based, and that are debatable the way we have been able to talk about this. So please, we are expecting you to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your time. We went a bit beyond the time, but this is allowed because this is a professorial, a distinguished professorial lecture. So thank you so much, and see you next time, and God bless. At this point, we'd like to end since there is no more question. Thank you so much. So we say bye-bye for now. Bye.
Bye.